the bands of the wicked have robbed me, but I have not forgotten thy law. At midnight will I rise to give thanks unto thee because of thy righteous judgments, O Lord. I am a companion of all them that fear thee, and of them that keep thy precepts. The earth, O Lord, is full of thy mercy. Teach me thy statutes. Thou hast dealt well with thy servants, O Lord, according to thy...
Just a second here, I realized I made a mistake. I should have started it 1 moment later. Hold on. Just need 2 things. Or 1, really. And even that 1. There we go. All right. Let's just 1 second here. Thank you. There we go. All right. I think leaving the sound on helped there because you could tell I was doing something. All right, now we got that light blacked out, so we're not going to let shiny in my face for a full hour. That's good. Okay, mostly because of me, because that will bug me, and that will bother you guys because when I'm bugged, it ruins the study. It doesn't ruin it, but it definitely makes an effect. I'm a little vulnerable on that front, I gotta admit. That'd be a weakness. All right, so why is it so... Oh, we're in the wrong microphone. Now we're talking. All right, sorry about that, folks. All right, let's read Psalm 72. Hopefully, if your volume was cranked, you saw that coming, and I'm not blaring in your hair now. Oh, jeez. All right, a psalm for Solomon. Give the king thy judgments, O God, and thy righteousness unto the king's son. He shall judge thy people with righteousness, and thy poor with judgment. I noticed it's thy poor. I didn't notice that last time. I assume that's specific in the Hebrew, and I'll continue assuming it. The mountains shall bring peace to the people, and the little hills by righteousness. He shall judge the poor of the people. He shall save the children of the needy. He shall break in pieces the oppressor. They shall fear thee as long as the sun and the moon endure, throughout all generations. He shall come down like rain upon mown grass, as showers that water the earth. In his days shall the righteous flourish, and abundance of peace, so long as the moon endureth. He shall have dominion also from sea to sea, and from the river unto the ends of the earth. They that dwell in the wilderness shall bow before him, and his enemies shall lick the dust. The kings of Tarshish and the isles shall bring presents. The kings of Sheba and Seba shall offer gifts. Yea, all kings shall fall down before him, all kings. All nations shall serve him. For he shall deliver the needy when he crieth, the poor also, and him that hath no helper. He shall spare the poor and needy, and shall save the souls of the needy. He shall redeem their soul from deceit and violence. That's a with. He shall redeem their soul from deceit and violence, and precious shall their blood be in his sight. And he shall live. And to him shall be given the gold of Sheba. Prayer also shall be made for him continually, and daily shall he be praised. There shall be an handful of corn in the earth upon the top of the mountains. The fruit thereof shall shake like Lebanon, and they of the city shall flourish like grass of the earth. His name shall endure forever. His name shall be continued as long as the sun, and men shall be blessed in him. All nations shall call him blessed. Blessed be the Lord God, the God of Israel, who only doeth wondrous things, and blessed be his glorious name forever, and let the whole earth be filled with his glory. Amen and amen. The prayers of David, the son of Jesse, are ended. And as Peter said, David is dead and buried. His tomb is yet with us. He's still waiting. Fortunately, the death does not require a lot of patience. It's a good thing. Because it can be, at least in human reckoning, a long thing. But like I said, from your own perception, there'll be no passage of time. There is no soul sleep. Like, you're going to have a long night in bed, but you're waking up like I do. and tossing and turning. Oh, no. It's not that kind of sleep. It's like that night when you go down, and then you're like, what? It's morning. That's what it's like. The deepest and darkest sleep you can imagine. It's only compared to sleep. Because the Lord will make us rise again. If not for that, it wouldn't be a good comparison, really. Without the hope of resurrection, sleep is a terrible analogy for death. The other analogies for death are more accurate, actually, because they're the less hopeful ones, because not all have hope in the grave. Not all have hope in the grave. And so, going down to destruction, going down to perdition, going down to damnation is a lot more of an apt way to describe it. To perish, to be consumed, to suffer the vengeance of everlasting fire would be a more apt analogy than sleep. Because in Jesus we sleep. Now, again, it's just an analogy. It's not a reality. You don't sleep. No sleeping. You just die, like everybody. Now, no one can deny that, right? And you can't really diminish it more than saying it's an analogy. Then like when we say, well, it's just an analogy. You can't throw it away. You have to deal with the analogy. Well, what's the analogy signify? It's like that. They walk over that so rudely. Like I said, to me, it's like it would be much more convenient to me to agree with them. In fact, that's the way I was raised, and that's the way I was trained. You know what I mean? Something like that concept. Nobody gave it to me. It's just like it is in the Bible. And if I know people who've studied, Brian. It's like when you look at it, it's like it's just too persuasive. The scriptures are too persuasive on this account. And we must cling to tradition and to our own hopes and feelings to believe otherwise. And that's just my opinion. Hey, you have to look into it yourself. Maybe you can come to a different conclusion and instruct me. Because I would be appreciative of that. Because I've had people yell at me. I've had people throw books at me and stuff like that. I don't want you to throw a book at me. Because I've looked at those books and they're garbage. Like, what's his book? There was a book by... I met him online. I forgot his name. It's forgettable, and it's worth forgetting. So, in the Psalm, despite being... So there's resurrective type thoughts in here as far as... Well, not really. It's from the previous Psalm that I guess I'm getting that. Whatever. Well, because I was thinking of David. Then I was like, the prayers of David are ended. And I thought, he died. And David died. And Solomon died. And a lot of these things, this wasn't fulfilled in Solomon. This was a hopeful psalm for Solomon. A psalm for Solomon, not a psalm about Solomon. That's another thing you got to be confused. It is a psalm. Solomon, this is what I would hope for you. That you would be the son who could carry us all to glory. The man, like Moses. Like it was promised in Moses, that there would be a prophet arise after him that would be like unto him. You remember in Deuteronomy. After me, there shall arise a prophet like unto me. And he talked about how to tell a true prophet from a false. And Christ was that ultimate prophet, the prophet that exceeded Moses, the prophet, the wise man that exceeds Solomon, the king that exceeds David. One of the lines I emphasized when I was reading, it's what it said, like all kings. And that's not sometimes we talk about generic all. We're talking about all kinds of kings. It's a little more, In this context, it seems a little more like it's trying to be, because he's trying to say he's got from the sea to the end of the earth. Everyone's going to come. It is hyperbolic of Solomon. I mean, he was a great king and had a glorious kingdom, and kings from all over the world did come to see him, but not literally. I mean, not literally all kings. Not like, and and also all is a sketchy word. It's not like every. Like it says, every knee shall bow. That's a little more like, okay, every knee. Not all knees, because when we talk about all, we often mean not all. Not every single one. We mean like I said, there's one that's sort of like a hyperbole all, but there's also, as we talk about in the New Testament, where it talks about all nations, all men, sometimes it's talking about, well, all men, Jews, Gentiles, Greeks, all men from these categories come into God's kingdom. And all kings, there aren't really a lot of categories of kings, though. I don't see how that would work. So, I do think that is more absolute. Because all can be absolute, but you kind of have to determine by the context. And so I said in the context of the New Testament very often, the idea of like he will have all men to be saved is referring to a generic idea of from whether they be Jew, whether they be Gentile, whether they be Chinese, whether they be African, whether they be European, whether they be South American. He wants all men. And that's a generic all. It doesn't mean every single man, because we know that God has not ordained that all men shall be saved. So it would not be likely that he would have a will to save all. Since the salvation of God is something that God had ordained before the foundations of the world. That means that the whatever is not saved is also intentionally left out. And okay. But like all kings, that to me that's more like when it says of Jesus, I should say, every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess to Christ. All kings shall come. He will be King of Kings. That was specifically the concept of King of Kings is in mind there. When all kings shall come and fall down before him, that's King of Kings. He will be the King of Kings because they worship before. Because that's the idea. You worship before the king. As far as you bow, I won't. I won't. But men do. That's what is done. Of course, Christ being the king, I will worship and bow before him, of course. But I just mean before ordinary men who say they be kings. And the truth is, honestly, though, it's hard not to bow before a king, a true king. Because we don't really have kings, but there are sort of king powers that people have to respect and bow before in that sense. Because bowing is a sign of respect, a sign of obedience and subservience. And in many ways, I'm subservient to the laws of this country. I obey them. I think I'm under that. That is not something that I despise. You shouldn't despise government. The scripture's very clear about that. There is a need. Now, when government goes awry or wrong, like Jesus, there's nothing wrong with grabbing a whip and taking it to those who are offending. I mean, like on some level, when it's appropriate, he took the cat of nine tails into the temple and drove out the money changers. Even though that was perfectly legal, no one had a problem with it till that day. So it's not a question of despising government, but despising unrighteousness, despising the wickedness in government. We need government. Of course we do. We have laws. Otherwise, I'm not one of these, libertarian anarchists. On that sort of, I am a libertarian, but I do not. I'm certainly not I'm a light one, because I use it. I understand. They have a great argument about prosperity, but prosperity isn't everything. But it is a big thing. The people should be free to plant vineyards and eat the fruit of them, to build houses and inhabit them, and not plant vineyards and have someone else eat the fruit thereof, and not to build a house and have someone else take it from them. That is scripturally unjust, and that's what we have. That's the confiscatory nature of what we have in government very often, as it comes in and you work and they take. You plant and they eat. And that's not right. That's unjust. But it's not quite the abomination of the money changers. So, I mean, it was more, we have abominations in our churches, but I don't, the thing is, I don't hold them sacred. So it's hard for me to go in there with a whip. This is my whip, if there is anything. The sacred space is in our hearts, and the words whip the devil out of it. That's basically how it works as far as I'm concerned. It's like, I don't have not a mission from God at this point to get all, get all crazy, in something like that. So I said 5. You judge the poor of the people, save the children of the needy, break in pieces the oppressor. I counted that as covered. Yeah, because we covered it with all that stuff. Those who oppress the poor, we'll get more of that, so we'll talk about it more. Because there's more about oppression in here, or similar. They cry. We'll talk about that. Because I don't want to go backwards. I definitely could have said more about the first 4 verses. And I like talking about the psalm in general also. But they shall fear thee as long as the sun and the moon endure. It's like, it is hinting at this everlasting kingdom. Now we know the sun and the moon are not slated for an eternity. But truly, here's the thing. They are sort of. They're sort of like, they say like, well, let's still be here. Like they talk about the heat death of the universe and all that. When it runs out of, when everything, all the suns burn out and all that stuff. Some distant point in the future when they figure this. I don't know that this is a fact. This is just what they say. Well, it's not just what they say. It's what they say based on a lot of research and intellect and investigation that I don't have enough information about to start poo-pooing. Okay. So it's going to go on for a long time, but then it's going to all burn out, they say. But the moon isn't burning. It'll still be there. The sun, actually, it might not be because the sun might enlarge eventually and consume the earth. They say like that. But that's also a little speculative. But anyways, even if it'll all still technically be around, it just won't be on fire anymore. It won't, all that. But they'll endure. But the point is not so much to talk about. See, here's the thing. That's the problem with the fundamentalist approach, is to say that this implies that the sun and the moon are everlasting and that they will last forever like God's kingdom, like everlasting life. But the thing is, what it is it's talking to men and telling men, what is the most durable thing that humanity could look to? We would look up at the sun and know that the sun, we can look at carvings from ancient people and know that the sun was there. It's just to be simple about it. We could say, like, we could ask our fathers, was the sun there when you were a boy? Yes, it was. We can look back in history and know, like, there's all kinds of references to the sun. People even worshiped the sun in ancient times. So we know the sun was there. It's been there for a long time. Science says it's been there for billions of years and will be there for billions of years more. And certainly the Bible doesn't dispute that the sun has been around a long time and it's going to keep being there for a long time. And so that's the idea, is that they would fear this king throughout all generations, as long as the sun and the moon endure. Like it's a statement of longevity. Though Christ shall endure and exceed even the sun and the moon, he shall outlive even the stars. He shall outlive the galaxies themselves, and the universe is just it's just a small diversion of time in an eternity that God inhabits. He inhabits eternity. Everlasting to everlasting. Our universe, all the billions of years, is just a drop of the bucket. That I don't know, a lot of people don't believe in billions of years. That's fine. You don't have to. It doesn't matter. All the thousands of years is still a drop in the bucket, but an even smaller drop in the bucket. Truly, the Bible definitely understands that man, in the face of eternity, in the face of infinity, in both directions, in all directions, really. Because it's not just infinite on our timeline; it's infinite on a time sphere. As far what time It's something we only understand based on our encounter with it in this one particular place. But for man, that is a long time. He shall come down like rain on the mown grass, as showers that water the earth. Yeah, when you cut grass, if it doesn't rain, it can dry out, and it can be, because it's kind of severe when you cut the grass down. And I'm sure that they don't mow it with a lawnmower. It's funny they call it mown grass. And the King James translate it mown. That's interesting. Because I don't associate the idea of mowing with anything except a machine. Like machines, guns mow down people. Lawn mowers mow down grass. The word mow to me is like moan. Is like, well, that's like when you just totally like, just wreck things in an instant. Yeah, I mean, like that's what it's come to mean in our vernacular, at least to my ear. So immediately, I see immediately like our modern lawn all mowed even with that machine that goes around and spins this blade of metal at, hundreds of, thousands, whatever, thousands of our revolutions per minute. Yeah, thousands, probably. I'm sure my engine, Anyways, so come down like rain upon the mown grass. It might be hundreds, whatever. Don't get mad at me, Mr. Machines. All right, but anyways, when you cut down grass by whatever means, and they were probably doing it by hand, right? It'll dry out if it doesn't get some rain within a reasonable amount of time, because it had all its growth in that. It had water stored there, and you cut it. It's like it needs to start again. It needs to set up new shoots. And it needs rain. And the rain on the mown grass will cause it to just flourish. And that's the idea, is he will be a cause of flourishing as showers that water the earth. As the water, because the rain and the water is one of the things that is used in the scripture as a sign of God's blessing. It rains on the just and the unjust. It is a sign of God's goodness towards all humanity. In fact, the rain is that which brings about the rainbow. Which is also a sign of God's goodwill towards humanity, or it is to be taken as such. That the world will not be again overwhelmed with water. As showers that water the earth. So, again, does that mean that prior to that there was no effect of that? That there was no spectrum visible if you caused a mist in the air and the sunlight shone through it? Would you see a rainbow before the flood? Well, of course, I don't think you wouldn't. I don't know whether they had. That would be a possible out if you insist on that. But I just tend to think that now what is just repurposed as a sign. See the rainbow? Well, I'm promising you that'll never happen again. And every time you look at that, remember, the sun's going to keep shining. I will not cause the waters to destroy you all again. So, rain is a sign of God's blessing. At least in this, it's showers and rain. A deluge. There are floods and stuff, but the Bible, talks about overwhelming floods and stuff like that. But not for the whole earth, not for all of humanity. As an overwhelming flood, so the Assyrian came into the land. It was used like that. Because floods are a real disaster that do happen, as far as small floods. And even science talked about there was an age of deluges because of certain effects in the in like a I remember they talking about. I forgot what that was about. I remember seeing this thing. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It wouldn't be exactly any kind of a global flood like we imagine with the water topping all the mountains on the planet Earth, which is, that is, well, we won't go into that. Well, if we get to Genesis, we'll talk about it. But that is something entirely different than what they talk about being geologically present. So, I don't know. Because my thought is like, I don't know. I'm not quick to believe in a grand conspiracy to undermine the scriptures. What I think is we undermine the scriptures by our own prejudices and by our own reading it a certain way. And then, just like when they used to believe the earth went around the sun. It does. When the sun went around the earth. When the sun was the center of the universe, the heliocentric model. I think that, they had already established that the earth was going. No, did they? Or was it, I forget. Anyways, the Platonian, or Platonian, no, Aristotle and the model of the way the world worked, they had adopted that from Greek wisdom, and they had assumed that you could find places in the Bible where it seems to agree, or you could say, well, here, look, it agrees, and perhaps. I haven't encountered that. I will keep an eye out for that, of course. I always keep an eye out for that because it's an important point of study to see where people in the past have deriven ideas from the Scripture that we no longer believe in. Because sometimes there are ideas that we don't believe in, like the earth is flat. There are places in the Scriptures where you could use that to shore up that idea. And some people, I've read articles online that says the flat earth doctrine is a biblical issue. And it can be made so. You know what I mean? Just like if I was to, when I dispute with people about the rapture, they act like I'm trying to ruin the Bible or take something away from the Bible. You know what I mean? Like I'm denying a truth of the Bible. Like I would tear out 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 from the Bible and just throw it away and incinerate it. Because when you reinterpret something when they accept it a certain way, you say, well, that's not the proper interpretation. You bring it back to where it belongs. They feel like something like a whole world event of billions of people disappearing has been now plucked from the Bible. The event that kicks off the tribulation, I just plucked it out of the Bible and threw it away. And that's hard for people to swallow. And a lot of things like that is when you say like, oh, the earth isn't flat. They're like, what? I have a whole scriptural basis for that. I have a whole scriptural doctrine built around it. You say, well, there isn't a serpent seed. Satan didn't come down and have sex with Eve and create a bunch of stuff. What are you talking about? I have a whole scriptural basis for that. You say, well, there shouldn't be slavery. We should free the slaves. Oh, no, I have a full scriptural basis for slavery. And people say that all the time. I was thinking, recently I was somebody was saying like, oh, someone was talking about how, basically how slavery came to an end. And like, but that doesn't mean Christianity ended slavery. There were plenty of people who were Christians who were apologists for slavery. It's like saying Christianity isn't responsible for the Trinity or something. It's because there's some Christians that don't believe in the Trinity. What's that got to do with anything? Or not, either side of that argument, of any argument. What does that have to do with it? The point is people were motivated by something they found in the Scriptures that they believed was significant. Even though there were other Scriptures, it doesn't matter what the Bible says. It matters what they believe the Bible said and why they did it. No, because people will say that, well, the Bible condones slavery by regulating it. By regulation, it thereby implicitly condones it. It should be like if we legalized prostitution, we had all kinds of laws governing it. We'd be condoning it? Yes, of course we would. On some level, you can't deny that. If we allow for it. And we already know, it says, and personally I think we should probably, because in the illegal trade, there's so much human trafficking and it'd be much better, probably. I don't know, it's like, you think it would be better, but it's because of the hardness of men's hearts that God allowed divorce. And the Bible also talks about prostitution. And there are prostitutes who actually feature prominently in a couple stories. Should it be allowed? Well, it's going on already. The question is, should it just be outlawed? Or maybe there should be more customs about it that govern it, laws, because it happens anyways and because it's impossible to stop. You think about it. Two people negotiating the price of an exchange in private is hard to stop. But you put it above the board, and you put out a big placard of a sign of like, here you go, you're cheap, whatever. And then you can have the police come in and make sure that everybody there is not there against their will or something awful like that. I don't know. Can they? The thing is, there's nothing I hate more than being legally ground up in the grinding gears of government. Meaning the law just grinds you, and you're in there and you're stuck, and you're legally stuck. So that's almost more horrific. So I don't know. But I don't know. On some level, The kings and rulers should be like rain. They should bless the people. They should bring, they should bring blessings. They should bring peace, as this psalm says. In the days of righteous rule, whatever king you have. But of course, of Christ, Christ is the ultimate. I hope that's understood in all this. This is a blessing for Solomon, but it's a prophecy of Christ. In his days shall the righteous flourish. And that is what, because Christ is the ultimate king. He is the King of kings. And this is how the ultimate king ought to be. That righteousness and those who do right should get ahead. That they should flourish. That they should prosper. Because it's only when you have injustice that people just doing the right thing are suffering. Only when the king doesn't protect people from injustice and from oppression. When the government fails to protect people from injustice and oppression, or itself becomes the instrument of oppression and injustice, the righteous cannot flourish, but only the wicked. And we see that very often. We see how the wicked flourish. Look at in our Congress, the Speaker of the House. She's a millionaire and gets richer because of her office. And so many people go to government and then come away extremely wealthy because they're cashing in on it. Let me tell you, when I was young and I was considering going into politics, I definitely thought it was interesting that you could be a member of Congress for a few years and then have a pension set up, an extremely generous pension. Like they make more money after they retire than I will make in my entire life, unless, if allowed to continue on my trajectory, which is probably not likely. My best earning days are probably ahead of me. Unless the world, they probably are because the money's becoming less and less valuable, so I'm going to get more of it. Meaning, it's the worst for people. It's worse for people without money. Where is that? All right, that's not my phone. You know what? I'm going to tell Jared he cannot put his phone there. Because I don't need calls from India in the middle of the night. And I know that's not him, but as far as that's like some sort of... He just got that thing. India. Could it be a telemarketer? I like that, though. My phone doesn't say India. That's cool. Anyways, what was I saying? Okay, yeah. No, the righteous to flourish. Government. Yeah. The kingdoms... The world, the good government causes righteous people who are doing the right thing to flourish. Bad government, they just cash in. Well, when I realized you'd have a pension, more money, blah 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 blah. Oh, I got through it all. I don't think I had anything more to say about that subject because I was at the part where I was talking about myself, and I could leave that up. You know what, son of a bucket. I don't know how to hang up a smartphone, but this phone is going in a drawer. Yep. All right. There we go. Oh, cool. We got a whole 27 minutes left. Excellent. I'm enjoying the study. In his days shall the righteous... Actually, you know what I thought about? I do know how to turn things off. I thought I did. Jeez. Maybe I don't. Maybe I did. I don't know. It seems dark. I don't have a smartphone. I don't know how they work. And that's by intentional. That's intentional, but it's about to end. They're going to force me to get one, I think. Well, I kind of want one, I guess. It's because there's certain times when I think that those functions and these are the things I would put on mine and all that, like a tool. Okay, he shall have dominion for also from sea to sea and from the river unto the ends of the earth. Abundance of peace so long as the moon. Well, peace and righteousness attract my eye more because the dominion from sea to sea. Of course, Solomon had quite a dominion from that extended to does it mention the river? From the river, that usually the Tigris or the Euphrates. I forgot which one, but from, David's kingdom extended almost to Assyria, almost to Babylon, not to it, but like to where his influence was that far. And of course, when they went, of course, after Solomon, they had a civil war. And that just, the kingdom can't, it's hard to maintain a glorious kingdom that's split in two and then fighting each other. So, yeah. Solomon, it didn't happen in Solomon's day because of God's promise to David. That Solomon didn't suffer the consequences of his, his kingdom didn't suffer the consequences of his, lack of discretion. I don't know what to call it, because I can't call it foolishness, because he was the wisest of all. But even the wise can be fools. That's the thing, is like it was foolish, and he knew it was foolish, because the wise know when they're fools, but it doesn't being wise doesn't stop you from being a fool, unfortunately, because the wisdom is it's a beautiful thing to have. It is. And intellect and all that, but it doesn't give you righteousness. It doesn't make you a better person. It makes you more clever. It's a weird thing. You think that the more clever we got, the better we'd be at being good. But I can testify that as a very clever person, I'm not good at all at being good. And I mean, as far as in the things that I struggle with them. Like I said, there's things I don't go around committing murders because I don't have a murderous problem. I may have a murderous instinct. I almost said I don't have a murderous instinct, but I mean problem. I don't have trouble controlling those impulses, and also I avoid such situations that would, I try to avoid getting into positions where it would result in such strong feelings, such as that. They shall fear thee as long as the sun and the moon endure, throughout all generations. He shall come down like rain upon... Oh, I went back. Okay, all generations, abundance of peace. He shall have dominion from sea to sea, from river into the earth. The reverence for Solomon and the fear of Solomon did not endure throughout all generations. But Christ, it is so that the fear of Christ, the fear of the Lord through Christ, the reverence for God and the belief that faith in Christ is necessary for salvation, and that without it we will perish and we will be cast in the lake of fire. That is the fear of God, and that it's the most essential bare bones version of it. It's like that God will judge the world, and that the way of escaping that judgment is through Christ. The world is still fearing it. Maybe not everyone, but the point is, I still fear him, and so his fear has endured. The fear of Christ. And even more so after he comes on the day of vengeance. But the idea that they're ever going to wipe out Christianity, some people think that that's going to happen. That will never happen. Ever happen. It's not even close to happening, because they live in a society that's collapsing and that has forgotten God and has gone into apostasy. They look at this apostasy and say, this is going to happen everywhere, all the time. But the truth is there are parts of the world that are looking on in just astonishment as we destroy ourselves. We destroy ourselves from within. And and it is the devil indeed that is down at the bottom that's destroying us, and that has seduced so many of us into this immorality, into believing that we can have a good society that also includes immorality of especially this sexual immorality that is so intensely want to bring out. And every society that has become like this is corrupted and ultimately ends up just like Sodom and Gomorrah. They're coming into your door and they want to penetrate you and find out what are you up to? Who are you? We want to know you. We'll find it. We'll determine what gender your children are. This boy's a queer. This one's a metrosexual. That's not the right word. This one's a whatever, pansexual. That's what I meant to say. A metrosexual is like a straight guy who's kind of a flake, I think, or something like that. He's all dapper and whatever. I don't despise the dapper much. No, you shouldn't despise them, but don't reverence them either. Someone comes to you in a fine suit. That's kind of gone away, hasn't it? But neither should you be too, there are other things people fear and about men and give them more than their due. Don't give it to them. Dominion from sea to sea, from the river unto the ends of the earth. That is, Solomon had quite a dominion. He maintained David's dominion throughout his reign, but afterwards it was broken up and it was split up. And this is only true in Christ, as far as that it will, and also that it would endure. Because Solomon's kingdom was not an enduring kingdom, but Christ's kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. It is the kingdom which David had hoped would be brought about by Solomon, and it's the only thing he could hope for his son. He gave him the highest hopes. It's a prayer for Solomon. A psalm for, was a prayer, a song for, a psalm for Solomon. Sorry. Dominion from sea to sea, they shall dwell in the wilderness, shall bow before him, and his enemies shall lick the dust. That's something we've been promised. But it does not appear that all things are put under his feet. Oh, they are. All things are under Christ's feet. It says so. And it is so. He is set down at the right hand of God. He rules in heaven. All things on earth are under his feet. But as it says, though, I think, is it Hebrews? Because I don't want to say Paul if it's Hebrews, because some people might. Because I don't want to have to discuss who wrote Hebrews. So I'll just say Hebrews says. Anyways, the New Testament says that it says, he reigns over all, but it does not appear. Does not yet appear. Let me get that scripture for you, for anyone who isn't familiar with it. I'll try appear feet as a search criteria. I got 3 verses. Daniel 10:6, Acts 26:16, and Revelation. Appear. No, that's not appear. That's probably not the word. I'll just put under feet. Unfortunately, that's going to bring a lot more verses. 24, that's not bad. I'm sorry, I should let you guys see this. Those of you who are actually physically watching. But again, I got to remember to make this study so that you don't have to watch. And why is that not up? Did I pick? No, there it is. Okay. There we go. Unfortunately, my face is right. For this one, actually, I should put my head like somewhere else. So I'll unlock my face. And I'll put myself, not there, maybe down here. All right, there we go. How's that? There we go. I'll go over there. That'll be more. I just have to remember I can't read all the verses. That's fine, because we'll read the verses up here. I think that's okay. We'll see how that works. I don't need to be on the screen, technically. It's sort of like, the study's still going on. Yeah. Also, it's like it's not like who's going to use this with watermark? Results 24. Just wanted you to see that. And we're looking for a New Testament result. Hebrews 2:8. Yeah, there you go. It is Hebrews. So Hebrews says, thou hast put all things in subjection under his feet. For in that he put all in subjection under him, he left nothing that is not put under him. Everything is under Christ's feet right now. But now we see not yet all things put under him. We do not. Now we see not. We do not see it. That's why we hope for it. Because what a man sees, he doth not yet hope, because it's here. When you see it, it's present. It's there. No need to hope. You might hope that it won't fall down, and that's for the future. That's something that's how that works. But that's what I'm talking about. All things are put under his feet, yet somehow we don't see it. It's frustrating. I want to see it. I want to see it. I want to see it. I want to see them lick the dust under Christ's feet. Lick the dust. Of course, you should remember Genesis. On thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. It is utter subjugation, because in the face of Christ, like it says, we speak the wisdom of God, which God hath hidden in a mystery. 1 Corinthians, right? That none of the princes of this world knew. For had they known this wisdom, they would not have crucified the Lord. No, they would have bowed. They would have licked the dust. They would have said, God, forgive me. Spare me. Spare me. Just for their own sakes. Not because they're sorry for their sins. Just because they don't want to die. Because die they shall. By the thousands, by the millions. They took it lightly. They were given the gift of life, and what they did is they sodomized children. They kidnapped people, put them into slavery. They did all the wicked things in the world, and they thought they'd never have to answer for it. Well, answer for it you will. Everyone will answer for everything they've done. And they'll lick the dust. They'll lick the dust to get lower for fear of him who holds the judgment. The kings of Tarshish and the isles shall bring presents. The kings of Sheba and Seba shall offer gifts. That was true of Solomon. The queen of Sheba. Actually, the queen, he was just a little bit off. The queen of Sheba came. Well, a queen is a king. It's just a female king. Just have a special word for him, You wouldn't have to specify kings and queens. Though it does talk about the kings and queens of the ethnos, right? And that was one of Arnold Murray's favorite things. Does it actually call them? Well, it doesn't say kings and queens of the ethnos. It'll be nations. And in Greek, I'm not going to... Oh, let's look it up. I mentioned it. Kings and queens. Let's see. Kings... Queens. Let's see how often those two things happen together in the Bible. And before I hit search, I'm going to... Kings, queens. It says ings. I forgot the K somehow. Kings and queens. All right. Bible collection. Ooh, that looks amazing. All right. And boom. Let's search. Results 1. Okay. All this verse, of course. Kings shall be thy nursing fathers, and their queens thy nursing mothers. They shall bow down to thee with their face toward the earth, and lick up the dust of thy feet. And thou shalt know that I am the Lord, for they shall not be ashamed that wait for me. Isaiah 49, verse 23. Yeah, that's what he was referring to. Kings and the kings and queens of the nations. That'd have to be the verse, because it's the only time kings and queens occur together in one verse. In the King James, and that would have been what he referred to. And from that, there's a whole doctrine derived from that. Just one little mention, in a certain denomination, But honestly, a lot of things are hinged on just one verse sometimes, and it's a little bit touchy. I'm always like, whenever I have something that's like hanging on a single verse, that's why I say the thought that Christ will return after 2,000 years. Scriptural basis, I got one verse. That's not really good. That's not good at all. It's a terrible... I'm like, if that actually was our only clue, well, whatever. It's like that we were even given a clue. It would be pretty nice, because it is not for us to know the times of the seasons, right? We do what we have to do in our season. This is my end times. I'm 48 years old. I don't know how long I have to live, but I've got to serve God. I've got to, prevent the world from ending, so to speak. I'm watching as my world comes to an end, you understand? The world I grew up in. Well, the world I grew up in is long gone, but I'm watching the last bits of it being torn down and shredded. It's strange. It's true, though. This is not the world that I remember. In some ways, I just went away from it all. And so it's changed under me without my notice. They will offer gifts. Kings will offer gifts. Yea, all kings shall fall down before him. All nations shall serve him. Only Christ. This was, like I said, this is this is one of those things where they just say all the best things. Like, if I were to go to a wedding, I say, Paul, would you say a few words about the bride and groom? I'd say, yeah, sure. I'd be like, this man, he's gonna father 7 sons. He's gonna have 7 daughters. They're gonna bear him 50 grandchildren, or whatever. It is not a lie you know, to say, it's a blessing. To bless someone saying, you know, and again, it's not saying may your this, may your that. It's saying all this will happen because it's really talking about Christ. But here's the thing. For all this to happen, how does this come to be? Why do they bow before him? How? Because he delivers the needy when he crieth. The poor also, and him that hath no helper. That's what he says. When you do justice to the weak and the helpless, and you protect those who are vulnerable and the innocent, the kingdom is blessed. You think about our nation when it was a good nation, when we feared God. That's all that can make you good. That's why we're becoming evil. We've become evil. As men, as we didn't fear God, we had victory over the Nazis. And in our victory, we became vain. We sort of inherited the world. And we immediately gave half of it to the communists, which was probably the biggest mistake ever made in history, honestly. Even bigger than the pandemic. But again, what are we going to do? Fight another war against them, who are our allies, and stab them in the back? You know, I'm not so, you know, I'm a bit Machiavellian sometimes in my thinking, because I'm like, we should have stabbed them in the back. Yeah. They were evil, you know, but that's why God doesn't put me in charge of things. I am just a mouth. Yeah. I'm not God's hand. Yeah, all kings shall fall before him, all nations shall serve him, because he delivers the needy when he crieth. All nations served us. All nations served our dollar. You know, go to hell, India. Seriously, stop it. All right. All kings shall deliver the needy when he crieth. The needy cry out for help. But, you know, what I would say is, like, I see the way America, like, we had, like Solomon, we inherited this thing that where we, not in the name of Christ so much, but because of Christ and the fear of God in us, we always thought of ourselves as fighting on the side of good. We still think that, even though we don't. You know, we don't. Like because the people that want to talk to your children about all kinds of sexual issues think they're doing good. You know, they think they're doing good. In their own, I mean, even... Hello? Hello? I don't know. Yeah. Actually, I'm so sick of this crap, you know? I should just do that. It's my fault. It's not their fault. I get all annoyed with the phone and the people in India trying to telemarket my son, and they don't know they're interrupting a live stream. That's my fault. Unplug the phones, turn them off. I know he probably doesn't want the phone next to his bed where it'll disturb his sleep. I don't blame him. But it's definitely not going over there anymore. All right. He shall deliver the needy. Good, I got more time. Okay, good, because I want to wrap it up in a good way. We'll have a good end to the Bible stuff. Now with the phone ringing, like, oh yeah, whatever I was saying, we'll pick it up next week or tomorrow. All right. All kings, all nations shall serve him, Christ all day. But because of our, I do think that because we're so Christian, God bless this nation, because there were so many Christians in it. And also that they sought to do right and to do good, and that men should be free and that there would be justice. You know, like the Tocqueville said, America is good because it is great because it is good. And he saw that when he went into the churches. You go in the churches now and you know it's not true. The churches have been co-opted by leftists. During the pandemic, they closed down. Churches closed down. I attended one that didn't. I went. I don't go to church, but I went during the pandemic just to support a church that I had no particular affinity with, or for. But they were good people. I mean, I got nothing against them either. I don't know anything about them really, but you know, but because they were willing to stand up and meet and to decide for themselves what danger meant and what was. It is not for, it's not, because this idea that the government gets to decide what risk we're allowed to take, I've always objected to it. I've always objected to seatbelt laws. I think you should wear a seatbelt. It's stupid not to wear a seatbelt. And I used to be very into wearing seatbelts as a child and encouraging my father to wear a seatbelt. But then when they passed the law, I got annoyed about it. As far as like, I didn't feel like that was how you get to that point. It's such a weird thing to say like, oh, we're going to charge you a fine if you're not buckled in. I mean, I'm a violent man, and that one inspires me, I got to say. God help my violent heart. Really, I mean that. Like I said, I realize, though I don't go around, I have good impulse control. That's the thing. It's like, people think, oh God, he talks about being a violent man. His poor wife. It's like, no, I don't. I never hit my wife. I don't do that. But I've wanted to. I've wanted to hit a lot of people, a lot of things. That's me. It's my fault. Because I am an angry, violent man. But the Lord helps me. The Lord helps me. He makes me patient. Because it's like they don't, and I'm not saying I'm justified in my anger at all. I'm just saying that I've wanted to hit people in my life. And I've almost never done it. I've never actually punched anyone. You know that? I've never given anyone a punch. Except my brother Frank. I punched him in the shoulder when we were kids. And my friend Alan, who I beat mercilessly. I forgot about that. Okay, I punched a few people. Never mind. I thought I only strangled a person once. Not to death, but just till people came and saved him. And that's not meant to be a brag. The world is full of oppression and murder and stuff. It's like, I love the righteousness of God. I love the justice of God. And when this country loved those things, we were good. After the war, we were filled with pride. We were filled also with unbelief. Because in that stage, it was interesting. Someone says that like sort of Hitler and the Nazis replaced Satan and his angels for the secular world. And so that became the new Satan. That's why today, instead of like, he's a devil, they're like, he's a Nazi. It's the same thing. It's a religious, when someone calls you a Nazi, you're dealing with a religious fanatic who believes you have been infused with the spirit of the devil. You could just translate that. Just translate it. You're a devil. That's what it means. That's what it actually means. Like in as far as in the because there's no rash. It's like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? It's insane. Like, there's probably 5 Nazis in the whole country. I mean, literally, probably 5. And they're just doing it to get a rise out of people. Like that's how popular that ideology is in our country. It's just so ridiculous. But when we deliver the needy, and again, which one is that? Remember, the poor and the needy and the needy. 12 and 13. I just want to check those verses and we'll get that done. And that's about where we'll probably wrap up. The needy here is Ebion. Wow. No, that's needy. No, needy is right. It was the poor we had a word. Ebion. All right. Needy is the normal word. And here's where poor is different. It is dal, which means lean or properly dangling or weak in that sense. So if the other word for poor, which was the one that meant like pressed down or depressed, this one is dangling. And in fact, perhaps the other word, like I said, might be better. Like our word might be downtrodden, though it doesn't mean downtrodden by any means. But it kind of has that feeling. And they might actually have a word for downtrodden. So, but it is kind of like that. Poor should be translated something else here. I don't know what. Destitute. That would be a good one. Destitute. Because they haven't used that. And destitute, definitely with dangling and the idea of being weak and without means would work. Spare the destitute and the needy. She'll save the souls of the needy. Okay. I'm going to go back to our regular text. So here it talks about, he shall spare the poor and the needy, deliver them, and him that hath no helper when they cry out. Because, well, and they say, well, it's not about the cry. The reason they cry out, that it is to be assumed they cry out when they are oppressed. When the cry of the needy comes out when in the midst of their oppression. I know in my oppressions, I'm not oppressed really by anyone, but I feel like by machines, and also by systems. Because there is systematic oppression that goes on, but it's not, but like I said, it's like there's no real a lot of times there's not a person behind it, but it's like we've set things up in a way that hurts people. You know, like I always notice that in the bank, if you don't have money, and people, even comedians have talked about this, and I've thought for years, like, if you don't have money, they take it from you. You know, they take more from you. Like if you're like got $0, right? They maybe take their fee for having an account, and now you have $-, and then they'll throw on if you don't pay that off in quick order. My bank's nice because if they won't charge you an overdraft on their fee if it's paid. Well, if it's paid within a reasonable amount of time. And reasonable is the operative word. It should be reasonable. But I haven't been overdrafted in years. But and in the sense, like as I say about that, I'm like, that's kind of irresponsibility. And you gotta keep track of your money. Don't spend more than you have. But sometimes you feel like you have to. Well, like I said, you spend it down and then you get to $0 and then they take even more. You know what I mean? But if you have plenty of money in the bank, there's no fees. And of course, I understand that. They can't have the rich carrying the poor, God forbid. You know, not that, you know, but that already goes on in a sense because the country is rich. You know, most people have no idea how, like people think, I remember I was watching this video where people were talking about, you know, what people's impressions are like about what the makeup of the country is. People don't even know what country they're living in anymore. I think it was on Tucker Carlson because they were saying like, yeah, what percentage of the population is African American? People thought like 40%. 40%? It's like 10, 13, something like that, I think. 10, it's around that. But because of media, it's starting to feel like half the people, you know. And then they're like, well, what about Hispanics? Well, that's about 40%. It's like there's none of us left. You know, I mean, I'm like, when you add that together, I'm like, it's 20%. You know, I mean, I know where I live, it's definitely not. Well, actually, the town where I go shopping, it is exactly the national average. It's like 10% this, a couple percent that. I think the town is just the national average, pretty much. It's kind of an interesting thing. Or it's close to the national average. Not the small town that I'm associated with, but the town over, the big town. The one, big town, 26,000 people. I'm talking about Freeport. And then, you know, but like, people don't know. And they think people, you know, like, how many people in this country do you think make over $500,000? I mean, they think like, you know, what percentage of people? I forgot what percentage they said, but it was more than it really is. It's like 1%. That is the 1%. 1% of the people make over 500,000. But people think we're richer than that. But the people who are paying the taxes make less than that, you know. And I still consider them rich. I mean, I do. You understand? I've raised 5 children on a 5-figure income. Never made more than 5 figures, to tell you the truth. On a 5-figure income, I've raised 8. And it's at that low, and at the low end. You know. But you know, I don't consider myself poor and needy. I think our country takes care of the poor and the needy. I really don't think that's it. It's the outside world that I think we abuse. You know what I mean? It's not our country. The poor and the needy in our country are taken care of too much so. So much so that they begin to just use drugs and then they live on the streets. You know what I mean? Like, if it was a bit harder, maybe they'd think more about that they need to work. You know what I mean? To or something. I mean, do something productive with their lives. Like, we have the impression that we can just waste our lives away in this country because, I think in some ways, in some measures, precisely because we are so good to everyone. And not that I want to take it away, but on some level, we're failing our people. It's probably better if we didn't have so much care for people, because it infantilizes people. You know what I mean? It infantilizes. And if we didn't, things would be different. That's another thing. People say, well, what if I didn't have my food stamps, what would I do? Well, if no one had it, everything would be different. Everything would be different. It would be a different world. I can't predict it. For one, if you took it away, it would be an instant disaster because millions of people depend on it and whatever. So it's like, it's hard to rip the Band-Aid off, but at some point they may have to. Someday there's going to be a thing that'll be like, we got to talk about austerity. Just like we have the Biden talking about food shortages. Food shortages. This is going to be real, he says. Food shortages. That's something I was just fearing a while back and thinking I was probably nuts. I thought I was probably nuts. Let me tell you, there's a lot of things the president lies about. But apparently when he said Russia was going to invade the Ukraine, he wasn't lying. And I'm betting when he talks about there being food shortages, he ain't lying. He's telling the truth. Because why would he lie about that? Unless he was running for office again. I'd lie about that to get into office maybe. Not me, but he might. I would see the way clear to lying there. Like the motivation. What's the motivation of scaring the crap out of people now? What's frightening to me is that people aren't scared because they don't believe it. So I didn't believe it when I thought it, but now that he says it, I'm like, well, I don't know, that could be real. Make sure the garden's really big this year. Oh, it's going to be. It's going to be. And see, in saving the souls, again, let me just save their lives. And that's what your soul represents your life. Your soul being saved. Like if my soul is saved. Like if I get in a car crash and I don't die, and it was like, let's say, whatever, something bad happens, or you're in trouble, you're under threat. There's some sort of something coming against you, some sort of threat, whatever, and you're saved out from it, saved from that threat. Your soul has been saved in a sense, meaning the scriptures will often talk about people's souls being saved, but it's just their ordinary life that is being spared. But it does also, of course, refer to eternal salvation, or it can refer to that. Or we can certainly think of that when we talk about this in terms of Christ, since prophetically, David might be thinking he's going to save the lives of people who need, because he's going to judge their cause. They're not going to starve to death. They're not going to die of destitution and exposure and for want of the necessary things of life, because my son will do justice. He will bring about, because when people are free to take care of themselves, they usually can. It's oftentimes people can't take care of themselves because society has so walled them in that they have nowhere to go. Nothing, no way to rescue themselves. And that's why it is more, I think it would be just more freedom is better. And I mean things like food stamps and Section 8 housing, they make people less free. They make us less free. They make us more dependent. When you're dependent on someone else, you're not free. You know what I mean? But we depend on Christ. Are we free? Well, I'm not free from Christ. It depends. Here's the thing. As one of my favorite thinkers one of my favorite living human beings says, Thomas Sowell, there are no panaceas, only trade-offs. You don't, as far as in this world, in the world of men, you don't get to cure everything. You have to trade one thing for the other. So yeah, that's why I say, and I've said it many times, it's like, yeah, I understand that if we eliminated all social programs and all social spending and direct spending, we would have a much more prosperous society overall. But there would be people who, if we didn't look after them, would fall through the cracks, and we'd have some really stunning, abject poverty. We'd have some extremes there. And so in order to cut in those extremes, you end up curtailing a bit of freedom too. But you know what? Should the rich be free to do whatever they want? To outcompete everyone to the point where they just gather everything to themselves? Is that a right thing? And they say, well, you shouldn't take things from people. It's like, you're taking from people. It's like, you're not, because like they go around and they outcompete and they go and they grab and they take. It's not like, it's like, you got to go get sales. I know this because I'm terrible at it. They don't just fall into your lap. I mean, sometimes they do. But the thing is, to get hyper rich takes effort. You don't just get there. It doesn't just fall into your lap unless you're born into it, I guess. I mean, that happens. But I mean, you get the people who start from nothing and get rich are doing things. And sometimes they're taking from people and beating people and winning and all that. And there's nothing wrong with that competitive thing. But to say that like you got all you had, honestly, is not entirely true sometimes. Now, when you talk about building a business from scratch and just a prosperous, like someone making $200,000 or $300,000 in their own effort, I'm not talking about that, though. You are wealthy and you are blessed. But what I want to go back to the poverty issue. Like I said, the poor, and I know we're over now, but this is important because I got to finish this point. It's other countries. We oppress, like no one's oppressing me in this country. I think we've cut the, like I said, we won't allow people to fall through the cracks. I don't know all that, but the point is, outside of our country, though, there's lots of abject poverty. What about the people that made your shoes? What about the people that sewed together my shirt? I don't know who sewed this together, but they might have been working in a sweatshop. They might have been a slave, for all I know. Half the things in my home might have been made by slaves, for all I know, or for all I care. Not that I don't care. I do care. But I'm saying, but I don't. When I think about it, I care. But I don't think about it. And most people don't. And if you do think about it, you're like, oh, that's bad. But what do you do about it? Nothing. So while the Uyghurs are slaves in China manufacturing goods for us, we're still the good guys, right? No, we're not the good guys anymore. We're not the good guys anymore. Our society is getting ready to groom children into sexual perversions. We're not the good guys. Our society, there are people, good guys, fighting for it. We've lost the battle. But not that it can't be, the war can't be won. But they're confident they can do this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be trying. You know what I mean? Would you try something so bold as to say you want to talk to their kindergartner about sex? Would you do that so bold if you thought if you knew like 40 years ago you'd go to jail? You'd go to jail 40 years ago. Absolutely. If you started talking to kids in kindergarten about sexual deviations from the norm, or even talk to them about normal stuff. That's not what kindergarten is supposed to be doing. It's supposed to be learning their ABCs and having their mother-child bond broken. I hate kindergarten. I hate school. I do. I hate for elementary children. Total garbage. Total garbage. I do. I think high school's crap too, but I realize that the reason it's so bad, it's like a preview to college. I have a child in high school now, and I see now that, I see how this works. It can work. It can, because it's like pre-college while you're still in charge of them. So I kind of like it. I wouldn't like to send an uninitiated child just off to college. But the problem with high school is it's made up of kids who've been to elementary school in the public school system. And they've been socialized in this bizarre environment. Which means not at all, really. They're still antisocial, living in the Lord of the Flies on a social scale. Because society is not made up of your age your peer group is not just everyone who's your age. You know what I mean? Like, that'd be weird. Imagine if the only people I had any society with was everyone born in 1973 and 4. Anyways, okay. All right, verse 14 will begin. Sorry it took so long. Whatever. I like studying the Bible, and I don't mind getting sidetracked. But yeah, our society, in that when we were true to Christ and our Christian ideals, I think we were the good guys for the most part. But then, being the good guys, we believed we could do anything, and we did things that weren't good. As always, we have done things that, people, we, who is we anyways, right? In the nation. But I'm saying, because a nation, it's a weird thing. And I open up a can of worms by even bringing it up, because it's like, a nation is not a man, but nations do have these arcs and stuff. And the Lord deals with nations as wholes. We've talked about that. Just like in Israel, it's like when they were under punishment, that doesn't mean everyone had forsaken the Lord. As God said to Elijah, I have reserved unto myself 7,000 men that have not bowed the knee to Baal. He wasn't alone, but he felt that's how bad it got. He thought he was the last prophet on the earth and the last man who served the Lord on the earth, that Israel had become so completely corrupted that it was only him who still served God. Where God said, no, I have my 7,000. They have not bowed the knee to Baal, and nor shall they. And the same thing now, God has his 7,000. Arnold Murray used to make a big deal about that number, whatever. I know, I will not. How do you know? You want to be in the 7,000? Does your knee bend to idols? To Fauci? Does it bend? If it does, maybe work on that. Work on your knee bends and strengthen that knee. Strengthen the feeble knees. Don't be feeble. Stand up. All right? Thanks for joining the study. We'll be back again tomorrow, Lord willing. All right. Do.
The bands of the wicked have robbed me, but I have not forgotten thy law. At midnight will I rise to give thanks unto thee because of thy righteous judgments, O Lord. I am a companion of all them that fear thee, and of them that keep thy precepts. The earth, O Lord, is full of thy mercy. Teach me thy statutes. Thou hast dealt well with thy servants.